Hello everyone. This is game 2 of the T1 versus JDG series. Probably the best League of Legends we've seen the entire tournament, probably the entire year, was played this series. I think game 3 by T1 is probably the best league we're gonna see all year. If I am gonna be honest, they played that game incredibly. So I'm very excited about the finals as well, to be honest, about DRX versus T1. I think DRX has a lot of momentum going on, and I think they have some very creative drafts that can easily give them the advantage against T1. T1, however, do have some crazy players, so some crazy good players, and they've played really good League of Legends. Only weakness I see T1 really having is their draft. Their draft, and then their the fact that Guma Yushi plays a bit like a psychopath sometimes, which I think can be punished if he's not on the correct champions, which again will come down to draft. I also think their top side is a little bit iffy at times. I think Zeus plays a bit weird at times, but Faker has been playing absolutely outstanding, especially this series, and Guma Yushi also played really well this series, so I'm very excited to see what will happen in the finals. But let's get into the draft of this game. So JDG go with the exact same bans on red side. Love that for us. They won the last game. T1 decide that this game they're going to be banning Viego instead of Silas, somehow coming to the conclusion that Viego was the problem in game 1, which it absolutely wasn't. You absolutely had a winning draft, and then you just decided that you wanted to throw it all away to play a full dive team composition into Viego, which is also a mistake, right? But this now leaves open the Silas. And you're going to see why they leave open the Silas, because they actually have a counter pick prepared that will come out in case they pick Silas. And JDG are going to pick Silas. There's no like doubt in T1's mind that they're going to play Silas this game, just because Yagao has tended to just lock in Silas whenever available, and it's his most played champion this tournament, and he is blind pickable. We will see that he is not as blind pickable as people might think he is. This game. Oh, whoops. Let's remove the sound. So Nami first pick again. JDG still leaving open Lucian Nami, which seems like a mistake again, because what OP are you trading it for? Well, you're probably going to be trading it for a mid laner, right? But you're leaving open so many mids that T1 can get an OP mid laner regardless, so it's just like the other draft. I would have much rather liked to see them ban Lucian instead of Graves here. And then just say, yeah, if you want to pick Graves here, you can pick Graves. Like, you can first pick Graves, and that's fine by us. Or I would like to see them leave open both Graves and Caitlyn, or just leave open Caitlyn and Lucian, and then see what happens then. But I would like for them to leave open more than one. Like, either you only leave open one role's OPs, which in this instance would be mid lane, or you leave open at least 2 roles OPs, and you leave open like at least 2 champions in those roles, if that makes sense, right? Like, you can't leave open all the mid lane OPs and then ban out all other OPs and have 1 OP remaining on bot lane. That just doesn't work, because then T1 are going to be able to secure an OP bot lane, and they're also going to be able to play an OP mid lane, right? Because you have all OP mid laners available and you have 1 OP bot lane available. So yeah, that's why I think you should either ban Nami or you should leave open like multiple OPs. So I think Graves ban is bad and Caitlyn ban is bad for that reason. Nami first pick, just like we saw. What are we going to counter it with? It's probably going to be Lulu or Philios again, because they feel that matchup is good. I, again, still don't think it's that good. I think it can be drafted against very easily. I think game 1, T1 just kind of had a bit of a bad draft against it, to be honest. Looks like we're first picking Silas here, which seems like a mistake, because yeah, that means you're going to be picking Aphelios Lulu anyway. They know you're playing Aphelios Lulu regardless. So now all of your picks here are decided. Oh, Bel'Veth? There's no way you pick Bel'Veth on R2. That would be psychopathic. You're just going to lock Lulu in, or Aphelios, man. Stop fronting. Yeah, and there it is. Yeah, they believe Aphelios Lulu is super good into Lucian Nami, so they will pick it here. Now T1 knows that what they're going to pick. T1 knows that Aphelios Lulu will come out. So again, we hope, if we're T1, we hope that our coach realizes that the counter to Aphelios Lulu is range. It is not full-on dive in. Would you believe it? How crazy is that? Kind of insane. You also want some sort of range, and actually you don't necessarily want range against Sylas. It's okay, but what you want most against Sylas is short range control and terrain control. So what that means is anything that's really good against champions that dive in or can control terrain. So again, it would be something like an Orianna is really good against him. Siggs is really good, makes it hard for him to play. You'll see the pick that's going to come out later by a T1 is also really, really good against him. So on T1 side, we should now be thinking, okay, we need some sort of range. We should pivot away from dive compositions because dive will not work very well against these champions. I like Lucian. Obviously, they have to pick it, and now we can pivot into some more mid-rangey stuff. Ryze gets locked in. Now, Ryze is a really interesting champion here. Ryze is actually okay against Aphelios. Mainly because Ryze can get out his damage a lot faster than Aphelios can, and then get out of Aphelios' range. Ryze has a lot of burst. What is Ryze's weakness? Exactly the same as Aphelios. If you want to picture Ryze's weaknesses, you just picture him as an AP Aphelios, basically. His weakness, terrain control, range. Those are his two weaknesses. Or not terrain control, but like area control and range. Those are his two weaknesses. What are his strengths? Absurd amounts of damage, really good push, and pretty good at 1v1ing during the late stages. Just like Aphelios. Except Aphelios doesn't have that insane push unless she has correct guns. And Aphelios is more reliant on guns than Ryze is. But it's pretty similar in terms of archetypes. In terms of how they play fights as well. Quite similar in that regard. They sit back, they want the enemy team to come into them, and then they have a super high DPS and super high burst when they can actually hit. And their problem is that usually they cannot hit very easily, right? That is kind of the flaw of that champion. The only reason Ryze and Aphelios are balanced as champions, despite having super, super high damage, is the fact that they struggle with hitting if they're outranged. And that's like kind of like the main thing you use as a way to draft against these champions. Now, Ryze actually does have a little bit more tools than Aphelios does. Ryze can split push more easily just because he's a solo laner, gets more XP in that regard, but he still struggles with the same way of fighting that Aphelios does. So I like the Ryze here. Why do I like the Ryze? Because enemy team has picked Sylas, which shows that they're more than likely going to be diving into you, right? Ryze has a really good matchup against Sylas as well. Sylas cannot get onto Ryze very easily. If he gets on top of Ryze, he's going to eat a QEWQ, and then Ryze is just going to run away and EQ again, and Sylas loses half of his HP, right? Like, Sylas he can only play the lane by having a jungler around mid lane, otherwise Ryze will just win the matchup. So I think this is a super, super cool pick by Faker. Obviously, Faker is really, really good at Ryze as well, but this is a very creative pick in the mid lane, and we have not seen a lot of Ryze at Worlds, and I'm super, super happy. Oh, well. Now we have, but we had not seen Ryze at Worlds before this, right? So I'm super, super happy that we're seeing this pick and people are actually willing to kind of think about matchups and archetypes and show some level of thought and cerebral knowledge or cerebral style of play when it comes to picking champions. I really like that. I think that's cool. So that's why I really like the Ryze pick here in terms of it beating Sylas as an archetype. Super cool. And it's also pretty good against Aphelios as an archetype. Now, what should JDG do? Well, Lulu has to be picked here. There's nothing else you can really pick. You could try to pivot out of playing Lulu Aphelios, but if you pick anything else in the bot lane at this point as a support, I'm pretty sure you're just losing. Like, you can't play Karma here. I'm pretty sure you're losing too hard. Karma would be nice because it gives some form of like engage to your team composition, but engage is not really gonna work. When I say engage, I mean speed up and kite ability. The problem is just you have Sylas and you have Aphelios who are already getting demolished by these three champions. So now you have to somehow pivot your team composition out of being this low range dive in comp and into more of a terrain control poke comp. And I don't think the champions are available for it. Like Syra is a champion, but Syra can't come out with Aphelios, and Syra definitely cannot come out in Solution Nami, I don't think. What are other champions? Renata is a champion, but Renata, it's like T1 is not playing dive, right? Which means Renata is not necessarily good. Renata is only good against like dive. She's only good as an anti-dive champion, and T1 is not really playing dive, so that's not gonna work. You need like some form of poke that can beat short range, or some sort of like control, like area control from support, jungle, and top lane. And I don't think that these champions exist in those roles. The main spots where you find like area control is in mid lane. Those are the types of champions, or mid lane and AD carry usually, because you can play mages on AD carry. But usually terrain control champions or like area control champions are mid laners. Cassiopeia, Orianna, Siggs, Azir, Victor, these types of champions, right? Most of them are mid laners. You're not really going to find them in other roles. Graves is another one of these champions. Outside of that, I can't really think of any. Yeah, no, it's a bit tough at this point. I think maybe at this point, you just have to commit to a full-on dive team composition, which feels really, really bad. But I think when you have these two picks against these three champions, it's very tough, man. I think maybe you just commit to a full-on dive composition and you just pray. You pray that T1 fucks it up on the last two picks. But at this point, you're miles behind in draft. Miles. I don't think there's a support you can pick here. Cillian, maybe. Maybe Cillian will actually allow you to play the game. Instead of Lulu, maybe Cillian can come out here. And then Aphelios can hit. Maybe what I would probably do here, if I'm playing JDG, or if I'm JDG here, if I'm their coach, maybe I pick something like a Gangplank here. I pick something like a Shen here. Something like this. Gangplank is fine, I think. And then you pick Zilean Hecarim here. And you just pray that Cillian plus a diving jungler, like Cillian plus Hecarim, will be enough. You just pray that it will be enough to overcome this. And if it isn't, you lose. And that just sucks, right? But I think Gangplank will also have a lot of control because Ryze is a short-range champion, so he will eventually have to walk into Gangplank barrels. Gangplank does have quite a bit of terrain control, so I think that would be a fine pick. So I think you can pick Gangplank here, and then I think you're just looking for Cillian Hecarim on this side. Gangplank will also work really well with Engage, because he can use his ult to set that up, right? But I think that's the only way you're ever going to overcome this draft disadvantage at this point. You have to do something insane. If you just play Lulu here and then you play a regular top laner and a regular jungler, you're just going to lose. Like, you're just going to lose. Lee Sin ban, sure. I don't really know if that makes a lot of sense. Could play Karma top and Kindred as well, and then play absolutely Psycho. That could work as well. Yeah. Viban I think is good by T1. I think Viban makes a lot of sense. Because, well, the only way that JDG can win at this point is Psycho Engage, and if T1 fucks up their last two picks, yeah, the T1 are just massively winning draft at this point. Massively winning. Fiora ban by JDG. I think you're removing your own win conditions here, because you're not going to be able to win a 5v5 fight, so you should probably look towards something like a split push. So I think banning Fiora away from yourself is kind of a mistake, because you could use Fiora as JDG here to try to get a win condition at the very least, which would be splitting, but it would still be so hard, man. It would still be super hard. Renekton ban by T1, I think that's a bit of a mistake. Renekton is not going to do anything against these three champions. Yeah, what do you even pick by JDG here? You don't have a champion. Udyr is interesting. Udyr as a champion here is very interesting. Udyr is super interesting. I wonder... I think what you could do as well here, by the way, is you could play Udyr here, and then Karma top lane, or flex the Udyr to top lane if he has a good matchup, and then pick a different jungler. Karma top lane or Zilean top lane. With an Udyr jungle here, I think would be really interesting as well. I think you could also look for an Ornn, but then the Ornn just has to play super hard engage. You could... I was going to say you could play Malphite as well, but you can't really. It's not good against these two champions. So I don't think you can play Malphite here, sadly. But I think Udyr is a very interesting pick. Bel'Veth, I think, is the most grief pick of all time. And I don't remember if they lock this in, but if they do, they're completely griefing. How is Bel'Veth gonna play the game? Mid lane is getting shoved in, regardless. Like, he's playing Ryze. Yeah, I mean, Bel'Veth will just never get to hit this game. Like, she will just never get to hit. Bel'Veth against Ryze, Lucian, Nami, really? These champions... Oh yeah, Yone. Oh, this is the Yone game. Yone Poppy. I think Poppy is a good pick here as well. Anti-dive by T1. Really well played. Don't think Yone is necessary. I think you can just play something frontline-ish and then you're fine. But you don't want to play Ornn into Sylas, I suppose, because then you give him a free ult. Don't want to play Maokai either, so I don't mind the Yone that much. Because these are all short-range champions as well, and if Yone can hit, Yone will do a lot. So I don't mind the Yone that much. I think Poppy is a great pick here, because the enemy team will be forced to dive into you now, and if Poppy can create space using her W, it allows for Lucian and Nami, or Lucian, Nami, and Ryze to hit freely. So I think Poppy is a good pick here. I think Malphite is. I think you just had to play Karma here, or Cillian, to be honest. I think Malphite into Yone is not a good matchup. The idea with Malphite, I think, is catch Ryze during the mid game and catch Lucian, but you're never catching the Lucian. And you're only playing against, like, 2 real AD threats. Well, Yone is, like, 75% AD threat, and the last is AP. He actually does quite a bit of magic damage. Poppy is not, like, an actual AD threat, and these two are both magic damage. So I don't think Malphite is a reasonable pick here. I think the idea here is just use Malphite to try to get an engage in. We have to get an engage somehow, otherwise we lose the game. Like, we have to just find a magical engage, or the game is over. If we're playing JDG here. And I think they can find an engage with Malphite. Don't get me wrong. The problem is just Malphite will engage, and then Bel'Veth and Sylas will both get cut off by a Poppy and a Nami ult. Which, at that point, it's a bit tough, right? It's a bit tough. And then Ryze will be able to do a lot of damage. So the way these fights should play out is, first of all, Ryze will push in mid lane, which makes it very hard for Bel'Veth to play early game. Lucian Nami will push in early as well, which makes it hard for Bel'Veth. Yone will push in early as well, which makes it hard for Bel'Veth, right? T1 has 3 winning lanes, which makes it very hard to play Bel'Veth this game. Kanavi has to go on an absolute madness to be able to win this, or to be able to be useful this game. At least that's what I think. The way fights should play out during the mid game, though, is Zeus, however you want to pronounce his name, not Zeus, sorry, fucking owner, should accept that the way he's gonna be playing Poppy this game is he's probably gonna die quite early in fights, which is fine. His job is just to make sure Kanavi and Yagao cannot follow up on plays with or cannot follow up on 369's engage. That's just his job. The same with Keria. Keria's job is just to make sure as soon as that Malphite ult comes out, you're firing down your wave to make sure that the rest of the team cannot follow up. And if you can buy enough time for your Ryze, your Yone, and your Lucian to reposition and get out of the Malphite engage and not get caught by the follow-up, then you win. JDG has to rely on the fact that if Malphite can catch someone, then they have to get one-tapped. You have to one-tap someone with Malphite ult. Like, off of the CC. It's the only way you can win these fights. If you don't one-tap anyone, you just lose. If Malphite ults in, and these guys cannot follow up in time, you just lose. Because if these guys get to reposition and get out their damage, they just win. And it's going to be pretty hard for Aphelios to hit in these fights as well. Because the way fights are going to play out is JDG is going to engage on T1, and T1 is going to disengage and kite back. That's at least how fights should be played this game. Which makes it hard for Aphelios to hit, because Aphelios doesn't like diving in that much. Aphelios prefers when the enemy team dives into him. Obviously, depending on guns. If you have purple and blue guns on Aphelios, you can do a bit more when your team is diving in, right? But T1 should not really look to engage. T1 should be the ones counter-engaging and kiting back. That's how they should be playing, and JDG should be the ones engaging and really just trying to blow up someone. That's the only way they're going to win. Another problem that you're going to start running into on the JDG side because of your solo laners is Yone and Ryze are going to be insanely strong in the side lane during this mid game. No one is going to be able to match them. Yone will beat both Malphite and Sylas, and Ryze will beat both Malphite and Sylas. So they're eventually going to be able to just take over side lanes and just have so much pressure on sides that it's going to be super difficult for JDG to force T1 to group up and actually team fight. So that's another concern that you're going to have. Unless on the JDG side you're going to drop waves to try to look for engages on the Nami Lucian, which is probably what you're going to be forced to do during the mid game as JDG. But I think this game, JDG have way worse odds of winning than game 1. I think T1 has like a favored draft, but JDG have tools to win, if that makes sense. But I think if T1 play well, then it's very difficult for JDG to win this game. But all it takes for JDG to win the game is one good Malphite ult and one good follow-up by one of these two. And then T1 gets one-tapped. T1 just gets wiped and they're dead. Like if Faker has no flash up and he gets Malphite ulted, well, that's the game, right? Or if Gumayushi magically gets caught by a Malphite ult, that's also just the game, right? The thing is, they shouldn't be able to be caught by these things, and JDG shouldn't be able to follow up on it because of Nami ult, because of Yone ult, and because of Poppy W and Poppy ult, right? That's the entire idea, which means that T1 have tools to peel their main carries, which is going to be Lucian and Ryze, and their main carries have so much damage if they get to free hit, specifically Ryze does. But yeah, that's my idea of the series. I think if JDG wanted to give themselves better chances of winning the game, you play something like a Cillian support with a Hecarim, with an Udyr, and then you can play a tank top lane, or you can play a Psycho top laner as well. That would be fine. Like a fist fighting top laner. Like Jax this game, for example. If you have Udyr and then if you have Cillian support, I think that would be good. Or I think you can play Lulu here, and then I think you should just play Karma top lane with Kindred in the jungle, or with Udyr in the jungle, or with Hecarim in the jungle. Or I think you should play Cillian support and Hecarim jungle as well. I think these are kind of the options on the JDG side that are going to give you the best odds of winning the game when you've picked Aphelios, Sylas, R1, R2. And you end up running into Ryze, Lucian, Nami. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that draft review, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. See you guys later. Bye.